So in this video, we're going to finish off our multi-selection by looking at switch statements. A switch statement performs the same basic operation that an if-else if statement does. However, it has some benefits and drawbacks compared to the if-else if statement. So rather than checking every option from top to bottom in order like an if-else if statement, a switch statement just skips directly to the proper option, if it exists. Now, it's similar to how a hard drive accesses data sequentially. So an if-else if versus RAM, which is using direct access. So it's either going through it in order or it's going directly to the option that represents your test condition. So to achieve this super speed, switch statements are limited in what and how they can actually compare the data. So you can only check equality. So there is no greater than or less than. There are no ranges of data. You can only compare ints, and you can only compare ints. And you can only compare integers. So the general syntax for a switch statement, we have the word switch at the top, and then inside the brackets, we'll have a variable. Inside our blocks of code, we have all the possible cases. So the case for the first value, and then if that value is what we're looking for or is the result of the variable, then the code will execute this block. We use a break at the end of each case. Now the break statement will actually exit the switch statement when it's executed. So if you wanted to continue and to start from that case and move on to each case after that, until it finds the break, it will execute everything that follows from that specific case down to that break statement. And then we have the second value. So this will execute when the variable is equal to that value, a third value, and so on. And you can have an infinite number of those. But then finally, our default executes when the variable is not equal to any of those values that are tested above. And we also have a break at the end of that as well. So as an example, say we're looking for a menu option for a game, or it's at some point, maybe it's after the game is being played, that sort of thing. We have our different cases for our menu option, and then we have our default. Now, what does case one represent? Well, case one might represent exiting the game, and then if they choose that, we want it to tell them that they're exiting the game and then break out of the switch statement. Same thing with case number two. They will continue playing, but then we want it to break out of our switch statement. And case number three as well, we'll say is forfeiting the round, but then again, we want it to break out of there. If they pick something that is not one, two, or three, then the switch will recognize that, go to the default, execute the code that follows the default, and we have an invalid menu option being displayed. And again, we have our break. So if you forget the break, it will cause a fall through. And what this means is that in the above example, if the user typed 2, it would output continue playing, but if you forgot the break after that, it would also output forfeiting round. Okay, so it will continue to execute all the code that follows the case for which you wanted it to. So case, when you entered 2, it goes to case 2, but it will continue to enter all the code that follows it until it finds the break statement. Sometimes you may leave out the break intentionally to execute one set of code for many cases. So if you have a range of integers that you want to check and you want to use a switch statement, then maybe you want all the cases for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 to all do the same thing. And then you would just have all those cases in a row, not have a break until you get to the bottom of all the cases for which you want the same thing to happen. So when would we use a switch over an if-else if? Well, because of the properties of a switch statement, you should only use it when you are not dealing with ranges of data. You can, but if they're very large ranges of data, then you have to make sure you put in every possible case. And then also, if it's ranges of data that are not integers, then you definitely should not be using a switch statement. It will only look at integers. So if it's a range of integers, then it may work for you. But it would it would be more useful to use an if-else if most likely, but you may wish to use a switch for small ranges of integers. So if you have a lot of options or an expandable set of options, so just like having a menu, if you have a menu like that, then using a switch will allow you to very specifically give options for that menu. If speed is a necessity, so you want it to go quickly, you don't want it to be wasting time by checking all the possible else ifs because you have so many of them, and you want it to go straight to the case that is necessary. And then you'd also want to use it if it's going to clean up your code for readability. Any questions? Let us know.